Alright, so back with another video talking about Courtney Clenney Taylor, who you see on the screen here, with tears in her eyes, playing the victim real good, and Christian Obumseli in this shot on the screen here. As you can see, she is attacking him physically, which we will get to that in a moment. If you don't know already, Courtney Clenney Taylor was dating Christian Obumseli. She is an OnlyFans, how do I put this? She's an OnlyFans, like porn star, essentially. I mean, whatever you want to call her. She's just, ugh. Anyway. And he and her were together for about a year and a half, almost 2 years, and she ended up stabbing him in the chest back in, was this in April? I think this was back in April, yes, of this year, in her Miami apartment. Her story, of course, is that it was self-defense, but there's more and more evidence, such as this, coming out to prove that that's not the case. Now, I can tell you right now there's many other components to this, maybe more subtle aspects of this, that make it clear that she is the abuser, and made it clear to me from the beginning that she was the abuser. One of the main things I wanted to talk about, and we'll get to the video in a second, like I said, but so this video just came out, and one of the things I wanted to talk about is with an abuser and an abusive relationship, when we're talking about victim and perpetrator, typically, actually, 100% of the time, I mean, it can also be hard to tell, like with this video, because we didn't really see what happened prior to getting on the elevator, which context is very important, of course, especially with abuse. But I will say that from the video, it's clear to me that, how do I put this? Victims who are trying to defend themselves don't, like, if they're defending themselves, it's usually a last resort. And if they're defending themselves, it's not usually, how do I put this? Unprovoked, essentially. I mean, I guess this looks unprovoked because we don't know what happened prior to this, but, you know, if you're getting on the elevator and you're talking about an abuse victim, as long as nobody's coming at them, more than likely, they're not going to put their hands on the abuser. Why? That has consequences. There is absolutely no way in an abusive relationship that you could go and just hit the abusive person or do what she's doing in this video and have them just stand there in the way that he's just essentially standing there. I mean, eventually he fights back and defends himself, of course, because she's literally straight up punching him. That's called reactive abuse. He's reacting to the abuse that he's receiving. But my point is, typically, a victim is not going to even be able to get this far with an abuser as far as putting their hands on him. I mean, usually if an abuse victim defends themselves, the abusive person, if the victim is even like courageous enough to do that, because you have to understand too, with the dynamics of abuse, the victim's being oppressed. They are actively being oppressed, and they are terrified, or not terrified, they're scared to an extent of their abuser and what their abuser might do. So what's trained throughout the relationship is to get you walking on eggshells as the victim. And so that's why typically with the victim over time, you will actually see them getting meeker and more timid for the most part, because what happens is it's the codependent, typically the people pleaser, with the abuser. And the people pleaser, the victim, gets into this pattern because the abuser treats them as if nothing they ever do is good enough. The victim gets into this pattern of always trying to prove themselves to the abuser, and always, on top of that, wanting to keep the peace with the abuser. So they kind of walk on eggshells, and they try to avoid any type of confrontation. Because if she was the victim and she did this, I'm just telling you, it's just not possible, because the threat to a victim, especially in a physically abusive relationship, of what the abuser might do to them if they lash out or later on, is too great of a consequence to even risk lashing out in this way to defend yourself. A lot of times victims are very anxious, they're very timid, and again, not always, but this dynamic here in this elevator makes it kind of clear to me who the victim and who the perpetrator is, because as you can see, you'll even see in this video that Christian waits until the very, like, he literally waits until he's being punched in the face before he starts physically defending himself. And that's usually what you will see with abuse victims, is they'll get pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed and provoked and provoked and provoked, either by physical abuse or by verbal and emotional abuse, to the point where they lash out back, either verbally or, if there's any physical threat towards the victim, then they will maybe eventually lash out. But again, this usually takes a long, extended amount of being exposed to abuse before the victim will lash out. Again, because there's so many components to this. Like, there's also... All right, so I'm going to play this clip. We're going to kind of break this video down. I do want to give a very clear trigger warning. This video is not easy to watch. It triggered me for a good hour last night when I first watched it, so I just want to prepare you, just in case there's any survivors of abuse watching this. It's not easy to stomach. It's pretty difficult to watch, so yeah, just prepare yourself mentally and emotionally, and yeah, make sure you decompress after watching this, because, yeah, anyway.
There you see him, Christian Obumseli. They'd been dating for more than a year, and they started living together in one Paraiso building in Miami, Florida, okay? But on April 3rd of this year, police responded to their super ultra luxury high-rise building, and they found Courtney cradling her boyfriend. He had been stabbed in the chest. Obumseli was transported to the hospital, but later died from those injuries. Courtney was questioned by police, but released. Her attorney says she was acting in self-defense, but over the next 4 months, law enforcement officials investigated the couple's history. Watch this video, folks, and found some red flags, including multiple prior incidents of domestic violence between them. Some of them where Courtney, there's Courtney, was physically violent with Christian.
Okay, so I just want to pause this because I missed the beginning part of the video, or I didn't miss it, I forgot about the beginning part where she slams on the screen. So That's really important to note. Why is that important to note? Look at her mood versus his mood. He's clearly timid, kind of freaked out a little bit, hanging behind her a little bit. And she comes into the elevator and is immediately like violent and even with the screen, and was hitting, like taking her anger out on that, which is another abuse tactic of like scaring the victim in a certain way. I mean, she just seems like, anyway, so I just wanted to point that out. And then obviously we see that she just immediately starts hitting him. So again, trigger warning, I am going to go back just so we can be clear that we caught everything, but yeah.
4 months, law enforcement officials investigated the couple's history. Watch this video, folks, and found some red flags, including multiple prior incidents of domestic.
So, yeah, like it's interesting because she looks like almost, I don't get it. I don't know if she's like holding the door open for him, and then she like gets pissed that it didn't close in time or something, which again, like what was that about? That was kind of weird. And then she gets pissed at that thing because maybe the elevator didn't close fast enough. I mean, which is just weird and makes no sense because clearly he's very calm and like, yeah, anyway.
Violence between them. Some of them where Courtney, there's Courtney, was physically violent with Christian. And prosecutors released video of the two of them in the altercation that you're looking at right here in the elevator.
So right there, he's trying to defend himself in a way that is like not harming to her, even though she has punched him and pulled his hair. And so to be quite honest, he would have every right to, I don't know if he'd have every right, but like if he did do that, he would not be wrong. I could say that, because if somebody's punching you and you end up reacting with a punch back, that's reactive abuse. You're just reacting to how you're being treated, even if it is a woman, especially if it's been long withstanding abuse. So he's just protecting himself here. Let's see what else happens.
This was weeks before
to just like
she stabbed him to death. Then, while she was at a rehab center,
he's saying, stop it, trying to like hold her back, calm her. This is like rough to watch.
Released video of the two of them in the altercation that you're looking at right here in the elevator. This was weeks before
like a body, like a restraint or whatever.
She stabbed him to death.
A psycho, mentally ill.
Then, while she was at a rehab center in Hawaii, Courtney was arrested. There's the mugshot. Charged with second-degree murder. At some point, she's going to be extradited back to Florida, back to Miami, and will get arraigned. But that's where we are tonight.
All right, so I'm going to finish the rest of the tape from the elevator. I wish there was volume, but obviously. Fuck. Yeah, my only thing here is like, I wish I knew what he was saying to her, because at one point it looks like he's like saying, like with his body language, he's like, I thought he was spitting, but he's like kind of directing his, you know, again, maybe just standing up for himself more and being like, you know, just stop or whatever. I mean, he does hit her in the face, but that's because she won't, I mean, after a while she won't stop coming at him, and it's like, dude. And then she tries to come at him again. I don't know if she was trying to spit on him. I know I said I thought that about. Yikes. It seems like he's just trying to get her off of him. So, again, It is really hard to know without context, I will say that. In terms of, we don't know what happened right before this. So, is it possible that he started provoking her prior to that? I guess, but based on what we see here, it doesn't look like that. It looks like she got onto the elevator and got pissed at the screen. I don't know if they had been drinking and she had an issue with that, and anger obviously, and control and other things. But yeah, to me it would look like from this video that it was not provoked, just based on how she calmly walks onto the elevator but then gets pissed after that. So it's like, it doesn't seem like they were arguing prior to that. So that would be the red flag to me also. And the fact that he's just trying to keep her off of him. And yeah, typically with an abuser, they're not going to be that nice. Essentially, I mean, if you are a victim and you lash out, they're going full force at you. They don't give a fuck about, they wouldn't just, more than likely, wouldn't just like put you in a headlock and try to like restrain you or try to push you back. You see, as she keeps coming at him over time, as it escalates, he then has no choice but to kind of push her back, and then accidentally, well, I don't know if that was accidentally or purposefully pushing her in the face, but either way, it looks like he did other things to try to prevent her from coming at him, and when that didn't work, then had to resort to the other. Versus if it's a victim defending themselves, usually because an abuser is wanting that, like they try to provoke stuff like that, so then if you do that, they have an excuse to kind of go at you some more, if they're physically abusive, but could be also with verbal and emotional abuse as well. So that's why, based on that dynamic and pattern, it doesn't seem like that makes sense with what's going on here. Because like I said, if it was an abuser, he probably just would have punched her in the face straight up. And she wouldn't even have had the opportunity to, I mean, like when she pulled his hair, for example. So yeah, that's all I have for now. Yeah.